Hello. All right, let me make sure, get this video looking correct. All right, looks like we are live. Hi everyone. Welcome back to Plant-Based Performance Tip Tuesdays with myself, Coach Kayla. I'm an online plant-based diet, nutrition, and run coach, and I help plant-based runners to fuel properly and train appropriately for their running or sport. So today we're going to talk about mindful, intuitive eating for running or sport and navigating holiday eating. So as we're approaching the holiday season, I always get lots of questions and things about, how do we navigate the holiday season when it comes to food, because as a tradition, most of us have food as part of the tradition. Food is part of that when we celebrate holidays. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to tie this into this conversation about mindful intuitive eating. And I wanted to just share really some thoughts. So it's going to be a little bit different than previous episodes, but really just sharing my thoughts and things on this topic. So mindful intuitive eating, what it is, it's a lifestyle approach. It's not a set of rules or things that we have to follow. It's really about the mindset changes. And with this, I have found that when I use these principles or really help clients to change their mindset around eating and the way they eat and why they eat, it helps tremendously with whatever goals we are working towards. So it really helps, and with athletes and making sure we're fueling enough. It's very common to have low energy availability, especially as plant-based athletes. It can be a lot harder to meet our energy needs. So it's so important that we do that, but we also do it in a way that feels right for us. And a lot of that has to do with mindset shifts. So, I'll have, and it does depend. A lot of athletes are more type A, and they love having just a meal plan. They love me just telling them exactly what they need to eat. But for others, if you have any past disordered eating history, it may be really triggering to you to not necessarily follow a meal plan, because they probably would still take that approach and give you a meal plan, but it may be triggering to count calories and count grams of foods that you need to incorporate as an athlete. So in that case, this may be a better approach to take a more mindful, intuitive eating approach. And this is where I really want to get people and get my clients. A lot of times I don't start there. I actually do start, more of getting them some guidance, having some awareness, making sure they have some awareness of what they're eating and why this isn't enough. And then I get them to really this more mindful intuitive eating approach. So that is our ideal. That's where we want to get you. Because it is a more sustainable approach. And of course there's many different approaches, and it's not saying this is the best approach for everybody. But that is how I kind of look at things, and how I guess the approach that I use to help people, with making sure they're fueling properly, sustainability for a lifetime. Because a lot of my clients that I work with are more of those everyday athletes, those that are going to be, doing their sport and are, going to be doing it for a long time, not just a short period of time. So I want them to be able to know how to eat properly for life, to eat and feed your body with the nutrition it needs for their sport, but also for their life. So we want it to be sustainable. So a couple points here that I wanted to make is that, number one, we can meet our needs without counting calories. A lot of times we feel like we do, that's the only way that we can meet our needs. But it's not the only way. And there are other approaches. And as I said, I want people to get to more mindful, intuitive eating, and how I approach it as we kind of get you there. But I do give you some guide of how much food is appropriate, but doing it in a way without counting calories. But other things that can help us also meet our needs without counting calories is around, as I said, those mindset shifts. So really, honoring your body, thinking about things in a different way, even though you may have in the past feared carbohydrates. Honoring your body to include those carbohydrates is a part of intuitive eating. Because we're giving ourselves permission. We want to give ourselves permission in order to have the foods that we need to fuel our bodies. Another thing I wanted to include here, number 2, is hunger and fullness may not always be accurate. And we want to be aware of that, because when you may think of the intuitive eating principles, if you're familiar with intuitive eating principles, and by the way, I should send you as well to where I can certainly send you resources to where to learn more about intuitive eating and this process. But a good resource is the Intuitive Eating Workbook, or the Intuitive Eating book that was written by Evelyn Tribole. What is her other name? I'm forgetting. Evelyn and Tribole and Elise Frisch wrote the Intuitive Eating book. So if you're interested in that, check that out. So as I said, hunger and fullness may not always be accurate. So one of the principles is really, focuses on listening, eating when we're hungry, and stopping when we're full. As athletes, we want to remember that this may not always be accurate. Sometimes after a workout, our appetite can be suppressed. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't eat. We do want to eat and fuel our bodies properly to help that recover. And I have seen athletes where they don't recover right away, or don't get that proper nutrition in, and they may feel really dizzy, they may pass out, and it has consequences. So we want to make sure that we are fueling properly afterwards, even if we're not hungry. And this can be a part of intuitive and mindful eating, because we're doing what we know is good for our body. Again, right? It's this mindset shifts. And then around, the holidays coming up, I want you to also know and give you permission that it's okay to eat and enjoy. It's okay to eat and enjoy those foods that are going to be around. Yes, you may not eat certain foods that on a normal basis, but it is okay. It is okay to, have those foods once in a while. It's not going to derail your progress. It's, you're not going to gain weight and going to drastically affect our performance. Weight changes are normal throughout our lifetime. It's going to change. Through our training, our weight can change. And that's normal. That is part of the process. But it's not going to really derail you. It's one day is going to be okay, but also, kind of ties into this mindful eating of giving yourself that permission, right? Giving ourselves that permission to enjoy those foods. And then next I wanted to talk about is, eating all those meals and snacks as usual. Even if it may not feel like we should, because we're going to have this bigger meal, which is abnormal for us. I really want you to challenge that and really think about, can I, have my meals during the day as I would. It may not look the same exactly. It may not be as many snacks and meals, but I really want you to still have, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I still want you to have something. And that is also a part of really mindful eating. And, during that meal, think about mindful eating as in, okay, this is how much I want, and, getting in touch with, okay, I'm full and I'm done eating, and I may have a little bit later. And that's okay. Another thing that I always like to talk about too around holidays is making sure our hydration is good, that we stay up on hydration, we continue to hydrate, because that's something that we tend to forget about or slip. We don't drink enough water. Thinking about that, I should also drink some water. So we want to make sure that we're hydrating, and sometimes we may not be thirsty, and it may sound counterintuitive, but it actually is intuitive that we do want to hydrate even if we're not thirsty. So during the colder months, during the holidays when we're busier, we may tend to not feel thirsty, but we should be drinking. We know that we need on average about 8 cups a day, give or take. Everybody's individual, so it does depend on you. It does depend on the activity that you do, how much you sweat. It depends on the weather that day, where you are, what you're doing, the environment. So much is dependent on how much we should be drinking, but we do want to make sure that we are hydrating enough, and that is part of intuitive eating and mindful eating, is drinking when, even though we are not thirsty. So overall, when it comes to thinking about or understanding mindful intuitive eating for running or sport and navigating holiday eating, is time, patience, and compassion. And as I said, these are mindset shifts. And if you can get there, it is magnificent. It is really, really awesome, because it helps so much. Even though you may think all I need is to know how many calories I need, how much protein I need, and that information's out there. You can find that information. But where it is actually doing the work to really figure out how you can change your mindset and have more patience, have more compassion for yourself, and give yourself time to learn. Give yourself the time to work on these mindset changes, and mindset shifts, because it does take time. And it's not something that we can change overnight, especially if we've had eating issues or eating problems for a long time. It's really hard and can be really challenging to change. So with that, thank you so much for joining, and I hope to see you again. And keep running, keep eating plants, and have a wonderful, wonderful holiday and New Year. And we will see you again soon. Bye.